Hi, everybody. We have been doing a series through the book of James. And unfortunately, due to a lot of interruptions and various different events that have caused us problems like snow and ice and other things, I've decided that what I'm going to do is put together a video series here of tracking what we've been studying and also giving other people who haven't had the opportunity to make it to get caught up. So we're going to be looking at the book of James. And the book of James, the focus that we're looking at in the book of James is that for those of us who are followers of Jesus Christ, it gives us some foundational bases for living out the Christian life, how to put our faith into action, and also how to live a life of discipleship to Jesus Christ, how to learn to be discipled and to grow in Him. So what I want to do is start at the very beginning. We're going to look at James chapter 1, verses 1 through 8. We're going to look at the challenge of faith. So I want to read the first 8 verses for you, and then I'll give you a brief commentary on a few things from it. So James, a slave of God and of the Lord Jesus the Messiah, to the 12 dispersed tribes, greetings, my dear family. When you find yourselves tumbling into various trials and tribulations, learn to look at it with complete joy, because you know that when your faith is put to the test, what comes out is patience. What's more, you must let patience have its complete effect, so that you may be complete and whole, not falling short in any way. If any one of you falls short in wisdom, they should ask God for it, and it will be given them. God, after all, gives generously and ungrudgingly to all people, but they should ask in faith, with no doubt. A person who doubts is like a wave of the sea, which the wind blows and tosses about. Someone like that should not suppose that they will receive anything from the Lord, since they are double-minded and unstable in everything that they do. Now, I think it's really interesting that James begins all of this with the metaphor that he chooses of waves. And waves are something that happen. And they happen when you have a combination of the wind and the tidal forces of the moon taking effect on the water and essentially making the waters dance to their tune. We see this kind of in our own lives as well, too, that we have the waves of the influence of the world on our lives with peer pressure, social pressure, cultural pressure, political pressures that try to make us dance to their tunes. But the one thing that we have to understand about waves is that waves do seem to have character and energy of their own. But in reality, they don't. They really are random products of other forces. And that is what happens in our lives as well, too. We have a lot of random forces or random products of forces taking effect in our lives. So the challenge of faith is the challenge not to be a wave. I think that's kind of a great metaphor for us to have in our lives. The challenge of faith is the challenge not to be a wave. Because there are many winds and tides in human life. And it's easy to imagine ourselves more important than we really seem, at least from time to time. But waves happen. But the big question of it is this, is whether the character that develops within us is the real thing. Or whether, as James says in verse 6, we are just simply double-minded and unstable, blown and tossed about by the wind, by this or that. We have to face up to the challenge of faith. So what we have to understand is is that the very moment that you and I decided to follow Jesus is the moment that we should have started to expect the challenges to begin. It's a bit like opening the door on your car and having a gust of wind suddenly grab it and just rip it from your hand, and it slams open. And you're thinking to yourself, it's a great surprise in that. Or you happen to have the door open and you're trying to get in, and the big gust of wind comes and slams the door on you. Either one of those can be a huge surprise to us. But we should not let things like that necessarily startle us. But James tells us in our lives, when we have things coming at us or happening about us, that one of the things we should do is celebrate such moments. That we need to look at them with joy. So the question about it is how can we do that? And what can he mean by that? Well, I see it as this from what James is writing to us here is, when a Christian is tested, it shows us that something real is happening in our lives, something genuine, something authentic, something serious is taking place in our lives. Because there are all kinds of tests. There is actual persecution. Persecution of Christians in countries where they are a minority. And even where they are a majority, there is still persecution that can happen. And many still face it even today. There are fierce and nasty temptations that come our way, ones from which we are trying to extract ourselves from. They have a power in our hearts and our lives, and one of the things that we want to try to do is extract ourselves from those. But they keep coming back at us, keep coming back because they've had a place and a foothold in our lives. But we look at the aspect of how is God redoing our character, because those temptations can strike us suddenly when we're not expecting them. It's kind of like undertows or sneaker waves that come in on the coast. That metaphor is so appropriate for dealing with the temptations of life. We have physical sickness that comes, physical challenges where we have a lot of questions where we're saying, God, why? Or bereavement, and when we have the loss of loved ones that are really special to us, really important to us, and we question their family issues, families that are breaking up. There's financial issues and troubles that are going, and on and on and on. But the truth is you wouldn't be tested unless you were doing something really right and serious. Now, coming from having some automotive background in that, one of the things I see is that mechanics don't just work on scrap metal or test scrap metal. Actually, they work on vehicles to test them and to make them whole, to make them function correctly and complete. And in our lives as well, too, we need to see that as followers of Jesus the Messiah, that we are not just simply to survive, but we are supposed to thrive in this life. And part of learning to do that is to understand that we do count. We do count in this world, and we are to make a difference in this world, whether that is through living a quiet daily witness of a faithful and a gentle life, or the chance that is given to some to speak out and act in a way which reveals the gospel to many others. And there's a whole spectrum in between that takes into account each of our individual qualities and characteristics. Now, for all of that, we need to become strong, to face up to the challenges, and not to shirk away from them, not to be fearful of them. And this is the reason why James is drawing our attention to the result of the test or the temptations. And the result of the test of the temptation is patience. In other words, patience is saying to us, don't panic. Don't overreact. Don't turn a problem into a crisis. Let small things be small things. Be patient. This is the great theme of this letter. And James says we should let patience have its effect in our lives. Let it work in and out through our system completely. Let it permeate every aspect of our system. Just like when we take medications for our sicknesses or illness, it permeates and affects every aspect of our holistic being. Imagine it this way. Imagine your life like a house. Faith is what's happening when you look out of the window, away from yourself, to God, who is so much greater than you or I. And patience is what happens inside the house when you do that. Now, James doesn't leave it there with patience, though. He gives us a parallel to go with it, and that parallel is wisdom. Faith, patience, and wisdom all go together. Now, James is the most obvious representative in the New Testament of what the Israelite scriptures referred to as wisdom literature. Now, wisdom literature is literature that's sifted and tested and collected the wisdom of those who learned to trust God for everything, and to discover how that trust would work out in every aspect of daily life. How should I cope with this situation? With that tricky moment, we need wisdom, and we should ask for it, which means we need to have a prayer life. We need to have a prayer life, and we need to be talking with God on a regular basis about the challenges and things that we face in faith. But how do I know God will give it to me? Well, here, as the secret of faith, patience and wisdom are combined. We have the heart of what James wants to say to us. God gives generously and ungrudgingly to all people, in verse 5. We have made the mistakes of letting ourselves easily think and imagine God as a stingy and mean ogre in the sky. And we project that onto the Maker of all things. This fearful, petty, and even spiteful character we meet so often in real life all around us, and even sometimes when we look in the mirror. So what we're looking at here is that we must learn who God really is and what He's truly like, and that we need to remind ourselves of that regularly, every day. That is a key to all of it. See, without that, we will be double-minded. We will be swept this way one minute and that way the next, just like the waves. We would be just another wave. With it, you and I will have settled characters. We will have wisdom and patience and faith. Now, may you come to know God as He really truly is, and may you ask of Him for the wisdom to be able to live your life fully and completely for Him. This is Dr. Douglas Balzer with Breath of Life.